Steam billowed into the crisp morning air as Marcus Reeves flipped sizzling kebabs on his modest food cart. His scarred hands moved with practiced precision, a stark contrast to the trembling fear he'd once felt clutching his service weapon in Baghdad's dusty streets. The rhythmic scrape of metal against the grill was interrupted by sharp, mocking laughter. "Look at this guy." From bulletproof vest to greasy apron, a group of suited businessmen snickered, pointing openly at Marcus's food cart with its hand-painted sign. Veterans Vittles. One man, tall with a Rolex that caught the sunlight, whispered something that made the others roar with laughter. Marcus stiffened but kept his eyes down, focusing on the kebabs. His jaw clenched so tight it made his temples throb. 8 months ago, he'd have commanded respect in his decorated uniform. Now he was just another street vendor trying to make rent. Then the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Alessandra Chin, Forbes-listed tech mogul and humanitarian, strode toward the cart in her signature crimson blazer and black stilettos, worth more than Marcus's entire setup. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon, diamond earrings catching the light with every confident step. She walked directly to Marcus, ignoring the now silent businessmen whose mocking grins had frozen on their faces. "Sorry I'm late, soldier," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then she leaned across the cart and kissed him softly on the lips. The businessman's jaws dropped in perfect unison. "Before we continue, if you enjoy stories of unexpected romance and sweet revenge, make sure to click that subscribe button. This is the best way for you to support our work. Thank you very much, and let's continue." Marcus met Alessandra 6 months earlier at a veterans rehabilitation center where she was a major donor. He'd been struggling with PTSD after his medical discharge, fighting for disability benefits that never seemed to materialize. The rehab center was his last hope before homelessness. What began as a chance encounter, she'd gotten lost looking for the director's office, had blossomed into something neither expected. "You're early, actually," Marcus replied with a small smile as she pulled away from the kiss. "Thought your board meeting ran until noon. I made them wrap up early. Told them my fiancé was more important." She glanced sideways at the businessmen who were now desperately pretending to be engrossed in their phones. "Looks like I arrived just in time." The men slunk away, mumbling awkward apologies. "You didn't have to do that," Marcus said quietly, flipping another kebab. "Do what? Kiss my fiancé? Come see the secret project you've been so mysterious about." She raised an eyebrow, surveying the humble food cart with genuine curiosity. "I wanted to surprise you," he admitted, suddenly feeling foolish. What had he been thinking? Alessandra owned restaurants in 12 countries. Her net worth fluctuated by millions daily. And here he was, proud of a second-hand food cart he'd fixed up himself. "Consider me surprised," she said, but her smile was warm. "So this is what's been keeping you busy these past few weeks? You've been so secretive." I was starting to worry. Marcus handed a customer their order before answering. "I wanted to prove something to myself more than anyone, that I could build something on my own, without—" He trailed off, but they both knew what remained unspoken. Without her money, without her connections, without feeling like a charity case. A flicker of understanding crossed Alessandra's face. "Tell me everything." As the morning rush thinned, Marcus explained his vision while serving the occasional customer. He wanted to start a fleet of food carts operated by veterans, giving them a path to financial independence and a supportive community. He'd used his last bit of savings to get this first cart operational as a proof of concept. "The food is based on recipes I learned overseas, from locals, from fellow soldiers. Each dish has a story." He handed her a kebab. "Try it." Alessandra took a bite, closing her eyes. "This is incredible, Marcus. It's my sergeant's recipe. Man saved my life twice. Once from an IED, once by teaching me how to make food that reminds you there's still good in the world." She listened intently as he described his business plan. He'd been documenting everything: costs, profits, customer feedback, in a worn notebook tucked beneath the cash box. His voice grew animated as he detailed how the project could scale, how it could help others like him who returned home with invisible wounds and visible obstacles. The hardest part for vets isn't just finding work, he explained. It's finding purpose again. Something that makes you want to get up in the morning. Alessandra nodded, understanding in her eyes. Though their backgrounds couldn't be more different, her childhood in foster care followed by a meteoric rise in Silicon Valley, his middle-class upbringing and military career. They shared a drive to build something meaningful. How much have you invested in this so far? She asked, gesturing to the cart. Marcus hesitated. Nearly everything I had. About 6,000. Her expression remained neutral, but he knew she was doing mental calculations. $6,000 was nothing to her. A rounding error, less than she probably spent on coffee each month. But it had been everything to him. And how much have you made back? He showed her his records. In 3 weeks of operation, he'd almost broken even. Not accounting for his own labor, of course, but the trajectory was promising. Marcus, she said carefully, this could really work. Before he could respond, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Alessandra's security detail, a necessary precaution for someone of her prominence, had arrived to take her to her next appointment. I have to go, she said, checking her watch. Investor meeting that can't be moved. But we're not done talking about this. She kissed him again, this time lingering. I'm proud of you, she whispered against his lips. As the SUV pulled away, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He'd been dreading showing Alessandra his small venture, afraid she would see it as beneath her or, worse, as a rejection of her help. Instead, she'd understood exactly what he was trying to accomplish. The afternoon rush brought a steady stream of customers, many taking photos of their food and the Veterans Vittles logo. Marcus suspected some recognized him from the charity galas Alessandra had dragged him to, where he'd always felt like an imposter in rented tuxedos. Here, in his element, serving food he'd prepared himself, he felt a sense of control that had eluded him since his discharge. The military had given him structure, purpose, brotherhood. Losing that had sent him spiraling into depression and anxiety so severe he could barely leave his apartment. Meeting Alessandra had been the beginning of his climb out of that darkness. Not because she solved his problems. She'd offered financial help repeatedly, which he'd stubbornly refused. But because she'd believed in him when he couldn't believe in himself. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. Alessandra moved through life with the ease of someone who had conquered its biggest challenges already. Her phone rang constantly with calls from world leaders and celebrity friends. She made decisions daily that affected thousands of lives and millions of dollars. Marcus, meanwhile, had been struggling to decide whether he could afford name-brand cereal. When she proposed to him 3 months ago, presenting him with a simple platinum band rather than anything flashy, he'd asked her why someone like her would choose someone like him. Because when I'm with you, she'd said, I'm just Alessandra, not a CEO or a billionaire or whatever label they're putting on me this week. Just me. He understood that now more than ever. In a world of people who wanted something from her, he simply wanted her to be happy. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Alessandra. Sending a car. We're something nice. Taking you to dinner. Have news. Marcus closed up shop earlier than planned, rushing to his small apartment to shower and change. The something nice he owned was limited to one decent suit. Alessandra had insisted on buying him for public appearances. He felt uncomfortable in it still, like he was playing dress-up, but tonight felt important. The car, one of Alessandra's fleet of luxury vehicles, dropped him at an upscale restaurant where they'd had their third date. The maitre d' recognized him immediately and led him to a private dining room in the back. Alessandra was already there, stunning in a simple black dress, tablet computer open on the table in front of her. She looked up as he entered, her face breaking into a radiant smile. You clean up nice, soldier, she said, rising to kiss him hello. Only for you, he replied, suddenly self-conscious about the suit's fit. He'd lost weight since buying it, the stress of launching his food cart taking a toll. They ordered drinks, and Alessandra seemed unusually nervous, fiddling with her earring, a tell he'd learned to recognize. What's the news? He finally asked. She took a deep breath. I pitched your idea to my foundation board today. Marcus froze. You what? Veterans Vittles, the fleet of food carts operated by veterans. I pitched it to my foundation as our next major initiative. She turned her tablet around to show him a professional presentation, complete with financial projections, impact assessments, and a slick logo based on his hand-painted sign. Alessandra. He didn't know whether to be thrilled or upset. This was supposed to be my project, something I built myself. It still is, she said quickly. The foundation would just provide initial capital and administrative support. Each cart would be owned and operated by the veteran running it. Think of it as a franchise model with built-in mentorship. She reached for his hand. The veterans keep their profits, get business training, and have a support network. The foundation handles the red tape that might otherwise be barriers to entry. Marcus was silent, processing. Part of him wanted to reject the offer outright, to prove he could do this without leveraging his relationship with one of the world's wealthiest women. But another part, the part that remembered the camaraderie of his unit, the satisfaction of working together toward a common goal, recognized the potential. How many vets could this help? He asked finally. We're starting with 50 carts across 10 cities. If it works, we scale up from there. She squeezed his hand. But here's the important part, you would be the program director. This would be your vision, your leadership. I'm just providing resources. I don't have the experience to run something like that. You led troops in combat. You've built a successful prototype with limited resources. And you understand what these veterans need in a way no MBA ever could. Her eyes were earnest. The board approved provisional funding today. They want to meet you next week. Marcus took a long sip of his drink, thinking, what about us? Won't people say I'm using you? Let them. Alessandra shrugged. I've been accused of worse. Besides, this isn't about us. It's about creating opportunities for veterans who deserve better than what they're getting. By the time dinner arrived, Marcus had asked dozens of questions about the proposal. Alessandra answered each one patiently, showing him the details she'd considered. She'd thought of things he hadn't: insurance requirements, health department certifications, commissary kitchen access for prep work. One condition, he said finally. I need to earn this position. Real interviews, real competition. No favoritism. Alessandra smiled. Already arranged. The board insisted on it, actually. You will interview alongside other candidates next month. And if I don't get it, then you don't get it. But the program moves forward either way. She took his hand again. This isn't charity, Marcus. It's a solid business concept with social impact. The board sees the potential just like I do. Later that night, as they walked along the waterfront near Alessandra's penthouse, Marcus felt a curious mixture of emotions. Pride, anxiety, hope, fear, the engagement ring in his pocket, a simple band he'd saved for months to buy her, though she already wore one he'd given her, seemed simultaneously presumptuous and inadequate. You're quiet, Alessandra observed, her arm linked through his. Just thinking about how much has changed in a year. Last spring I was attending group therapy sessions, barely functioning. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Do you know what the therapist asked in my first session? She asked what I lived for. What did you say? Nothing. I couldn't think of a single thing. He took both her hands in his. Now I have answers. Tearing. Alessandra's eyes glistened in the moonlight. Tell me. Instead of speaking, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. It was nothing compared to the jewelry she could afford. Just a simple silver band with a small inset diamond. But he'd chosen it because it reminded him of her. Unpretentious despite its value. I know you already have a ring, he said awkwardly. And I know we're already engaged. But that was you asking me. This is me asking you. Properly. He dropped to one knee, aware of passers-by slowing to watch. Alessandra Chin, will you marry me? Not because of your foundation or my food cart or any reason except that I love you. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded, extending her hand. Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, next to the platinum band she already wore. It's perfect, she whispered as he stood. And the answer is yes, in case that wasn't clear. They kissed as a small crowd that had gathered applauded. Neither noticed the smartphone cameras capturing the moment, or recognized the business executive who had mocked Marcus that morning among the onlookers, his expression now a mixture of embarrassment and awe. By morning, their engagement or re-engagement was trending on social media. Alessandra's PR team was working overtime to manage the sudden interest in Veterans Vittles and the Foundation's new initiative. Marcus's food cart had a line around the block before he even opened. Among the crowd was a familiar face, the businessman with the Rolex who had laughed at him the day before. When the man reached the front of the line, he cleared his throat awkwardly. "I owe you an apology for yesterday. I was out of line." Marcus nodded, neither accepting nor rejecting the apology as he prepared the man's order. "I'm on the board of a real estate investment firm," the man continued, sliding a business card across the counter. "We have several commercial properties that might be perfect for commissary kitchen space for your veteran program." At Marcus's surprised look, he added, "My brother served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He struggled when he came home too. I'll pass this along to the program director when they're selected," Marcus said, handing the man his food. "I hope it's you," the man replied sincerely. "What you're doing here, it matters." As the man walked away, Alessandra appeared, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Despite her attempt at a low profile, heads turned as people recognized her. "Thought you had meetings all day," Marcus said as she rounded the cart to stand beside him. "Rescheduled. Today I'm your assistant." She grabbed an apron hanging on the side of the cart. "Show me how to make these kebabs that are causing such a sensation." "You don't have to do this," he protested. "I want to," she replied, tying the apron around her waist. "I want to understand what makes this special. What makes you light up when you talk about it." For the rest of the day, Billionaire tech CEO Alessandra Chun served kebabs alongside her veteran fiancé, learning his recipes, hearing his stories, understanding his vision in a way no business proposal could convey. She watched as he spoke with customers, many of them veterans themselves who had heard about the cart through social media, with an ease and confidence she rarely saw in him at high society functions. Here, in his element, Marcus was transformed. His hands moved with certainty. His voice carried authority. His smile came easily. This was the man she had fallen in love with, not defined by his trauma or his past, but by his capacity to create and connect. As the day wound down and they cleaned the cart together, Alessandra understood something fundamental about their relationship that had eluded her. Their worlds weren't as different as they appeared. Both had found purpose in building something larger than themselves. Both knew the weight of responsibility and the satisfaction of seeing a vision become reality. "I think I get it now," she said as they closed up shop. "Why this matters so much to you." Marcus looked up from counting the day's impressive earnings. "Yeah, it's not about the money or even the food, really. It's about creating a place where people like you belong, where the skills you learned serving your country still matter." He nodded slowly. "When I was at my lowest, what I missed most wasn't the adrenaline or the structure. It was the purpose. Knowing that what I did mattered." He gestured to the cart. "This is small compared to what you do every day. But don't," she interrupted. "Don't compare. What you're building here is exactly as important as anything I've done. Maybe more so." A month later, Marcus sat nervously in the Chun Foundation's sleek conference room, adjusting his tie as the board members filed in. He was the final candidate of 5 being interviewed for the Veterans Vittles program director position. The interview was grueling, detailed questions about his business model, his leadership philosophy, his plans for scaling the program. He answered honestly, including admitting when he didn't know something or would need to rely on the expertise of others. When the board asked about his relationship with Alessandra and whether it would complicate the professional dynamics, he addressed it head-on. "Ms. Chun and I have agreed that for the purposes of this program, our personal relationship remains separate. She will recuse herself from direct oversight, and I will report to the board through the Foundation's executive director like any other program head." He met each board member's gaze in turn. "I'm here because I believe in this program's potential, not because of who I'm engaged to. If that's why you select me, I respectfully decline the position. The board members exchanged impressed glances. 2 days later, Marcus received the call offering him the position. 6 months after that, Veterans Vittles launched in 10 cities simultaneously, with 50 veterans at the helm of their own food carts, serving recipes from around the world. Marcus kept his original cart, operating it 1 day a week to stay connected to the program's roots. The other days he traveled between cities, mentoring new vendors, troubleshooting issues, and expanding the program. Alessandra watched with pride as Marcus testified before Congress about veteran entrepreneurship programs, his confidence growing with each public appearance. The once paralyzed veteran who could barely leave his apartment now commanded attention in boardrooms and government hearings, his passion for helping his fellow veterans overcoming his natural reticence. On their wedding day, a small ceremony on the beach rather than the elaborate society event the press had expected, Marcus and Alessandra exchanged vows surrounded by family, friends, and a dozen veterans from the program. "When we met," Marcus said in his vows, "I was lost. You didn't try to fix me or change me. You just stood beside me while I found my way back." His voice caught. "You saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Alessandra, usually composed in any situation, wiped tears as she spoke her vows. "You taught me that true strength isn't in what you achieve or acquire, but in how you recover when you fall, and how you help others rise." She slipped her hand into his. "You remind me every day why the work matters. Not the foundation or the company, but the lives we touch." As they exchanged rings, Marcus insisted they both were the simple bands he had purchased rather than anything more extravagant. The businessman who had once mocked him looked on from his place among the guests. Beside him sat his brother, now one of the Veterans Vittles operators in Chicago, his life transformed by the program. At the reception, as Marcus and Alessandra moved between tables greeting guests, the businessman approached with champagne flutes for them both. "To second chances," he said, raising his glass, "and to the most unlikely pair who proved us all wrong." Alessandra smiled, taking Marcus's hand. "Not unlikely at all," she corrected gently. "Just unexpected." Marcus looked around at the gathering, tech executives mingling with veterans, society figures chatting with food cart operators, and felt a sense of completion. The worlds he and Alessandra inhabited had seemed impossibly far apart once. Now they overlapped and enriched each other, creating something neither could have built alone. Later that night, as they danced under the stars, Alessandra leaned close to whisper in his ear. "You know what I love most about our story?" she asked. "What's that?" "That day at your food cart. The day those men laughed at you and I showed up unexpectedly. You weren't embarrassed by what you were building. You were proud of it." She pulled back to look into his eyes. "That's when I knew for certain I wanted to spend my life with you." Marcus smiled, thinking of how far they'd come from that moment. "You know what I love most about our story?" he asked in return. "Tell me." "That it's just beginning." As they swayed to the music, surrounded by the community they had built together, both knew the truth of those words. Their story, improbable, inspiring, and still unfolding, was proof that sometimes the most unlikely paths lead exactly where you're meant to be. The next morning, as dawn broke over the ocean, Marcus and Alessandra walked barefoot on the beach, coffee in hand, planning their future, not as billionaire and veteran, CEO and program director, or any other labels the world might assign them, just as two people who had found in each other something essential: the courage to be vulnerable, the strength to grow, and the wisdom to recognize that true value isn't measured by bank accounts or medals, but by lives touched and barriers broken. And somewhere in the city, a new veteran was opening a food cart for the first time, nervous but hopeful, part of something larger than himself, just as Marcus had once been, just as we all hope to be.